don't even know how to use health, and I hit the wrong button. Returnal is a third-person roguelike psychological horror game developed by Housemarque and published by Sony Interactive. The story rotates around astro explorer Celine, who attempts to land on the planet Atropos to investigate what she calls the White Shadow. As she arrives to the planet, Celine's ship suffers heavy damage, and she is forced to crash land on the planet. Celine attempts to contact Astra, but there is no response, and because of this, Celine has no choice but to explore the planet. As she explores the planet, she comes across a corpse of herself. She also learns that every time she dies, time seems to loop back to the moment she crashed. Beyond that, the planet also seems to change every time Celine dies. That, along with the visions she is having, Celine must keep fighting through the world to find out the truth about White Shadow and find her way back home.
Scout log, Atropos. I have found a deceased Astra Scout here. Checking identification on a helmet. It's...
My thoughts on the story is, it is a weird one. I did enjoy it for what it was, but it was definitely weird. To be upfront, roguelike games are usually not for me. A lot of people love games like Hades, for instance, which is another roguelike game that came out last year, because it is a great game, but I couldn't get into it myself because I couldn't get into the roguelike elements of the game. And while this game isn't a traditional roguelike, since there is some permanent progression, it still worried me a little bit going in that I may not like it, or I may struggle with it, or even struggle finishing it because of that. That being said, I do love sci-fi and third-person shooters, so I wanted to give the game a chance. And while I did get frustrated by the roguelike elements of returning to the ship every time I died, I also got hooked by the story and wanted to see how the story ends and what happens with Celine. And that's the mark of an intriguing story, one that keeps the player wanting to keep going no matter how frustrating the game may get, to see how the story goes. Because even though, like I said, it is a weird story, I still wanted to see how it goes, and it kept me engaged all the way through. That being said, if you don't like roguelikes, or if you don't like having to start whole areas over again because of a death, then this game probably isn't for you. Since there will be times where the player does 1 to 3 hour runs of the game, and then they'll die and they'll have to start over all the way back at the ship. You lose your weapons and everything, so you'll just have your basic pistol from the start. You have to re-find weapons and everything. So keep that in mind before purchasing this game. Another big part of the game is the house. This is Celine's house that is somehow on the planet. This is a different type of gameplay, as it's more like a first-person horror game, kind of like a PT. The house will be accessed by the player throughout the game. That will add some background, or maybe for some players, confusion to the story, and adds insight into the life of Celine. So definitely make sure you do all those house sections because they are super important. The gameplay of Returnal is one of the big strengths of the game in terms of gunplay and just how fluid Celine moves around the map. A lot of time is spent going around the map, going through different doors to find health, which as you find more health, you're able to upgrade Celine's overall health. Finding Abolites, which is the currency in the game that is used to buy healing items and other things from stores that are found throughout the maps. You'll also find Ether, which is used to either purchase revives from a weird looking press looking thing. It has like a demon on it or something, but you go inside of there and then you'll get a free revive where you're able to keep your items. Or it's used to get rid of the malignant effects on items. And also you'd be looking for parasites, such as being able to survive a killing blow, extra gun damage, etc. The biggest issue with attaching Parasite to Celine or picking up some items covered in malignant effects is that there's always a negative that comes with it. For example, if the player attaches a Parasite that raises weapon damage, it sounds great on the surface, until you find out the negative is the enemies unleash a counterattack every time you hit them until you kill 50 enemies or until the player collects so many Abelites. So always look at what you're picking up to make sure that the positives outweigh the negatives, because one bad decision can screw up an entire run pretty fast. You will have runs where you find good guns, and then you'll have runs where you find nothing but pistols, which nothing is more infuriating in this game because fuck pistols. That is one of my bigger issues with the game, is just how sporadic the guns are, and just how sometimes where you'll have an entire run where the game's just screwing you over and doesn't want to work with you at all. There are also some glitches I ran into during my playthrough, some of which have been fixed, like doors not opening and causing me to restart an entire run. This has been fixed recently, but I just wanted to mention it because it was one of my big annoying things that I found in the game. Having revive items, but when I died, I started the run over completely instead of reviving like I was supposed to. It's just a bunch of things like that that can screw a player over in a game already meant to be frustrating that a lot of players could find even more frustrating. But they are actively working on fixing the issues, and hopefully they have all these issues worked out if they don't already by the time you listen to this. Returnal does have a few collectibles you can find throughout Atropos, including scout logs, which is pretty much voice logs that are left by Celine's past self kind of in previous runs that you don't personally see, that leave information on the area you were in. She'll talk about different things she's seen and stuff like that, stuff that's very important to the story. Xenoglyphs that translate ancient alien text to tell you the true story of the alien planet. Ship logs that are lore entries that unlock throughout your playthrough that are found on the ship at the beginning of the runs. You go into the ship, you look at one of the computers, and you find the scout logs in there. And also Xeno archives, which show different events that have transpired on Atropos that are important to the lore and backstory of the planet. You'll find these in every area. Sometimes they're harder to find than others, but every area does have them. All of these collectibles are very important in regards of getting the full story of Returnal, so make sure to read all of these that you come across and try to find everything you can to unlock the entire story of Returnal so you know everything that's going on. In terms of your final score, this one was kind of a tough one in terms of scoring. The story kept me intrigued all the way through. There was nothing overly special about it, but it did, like I said, keep me engaged and make me want to keep pushing through. There were things I loved and hated about the game that I kind of went through throughout the review, but overall, I did enjoy the gunplay so much, and in games like this, that is the most important thing. The most important thing here is the gunplay and the fluid movements of your character, because if the gameplay in this kind of game, there is a story to it, but it still leans, and most roguelike games do, leans more towards the gameplay. So if your gameplay's bad, your roguelike game won't really hold up. But I think the gameplay here was solid. There were small glitches and stuff, bugs that need to be ironed out throughout. But other than that, I think the gameplay was definitely the most solid part of the game, which it needs to be here. That being said, I think all of it together, right? A story that I enjoyed, but there was nothing special about it. Gameplay that was really good, but had a few issues. I think I'm going to end up at a 7 out of 10. I was gonna go 8 out of 10, but kind of talking it over and stuff like that, I was like, it really depends on who you are, right? If you love a game, if it's like next level, it maybe some people can give it an 8 or a 9. If you love roguelike games, I can see somebody giving an 8 or a 9. If you hate roguelike games, you can't stand them, I can see you giving it an even lower score than that. But I think 7 is kind of a sweet spot. It really hinged right on a 7 or an 8. But I think I'm going to end up at a 7 out of 10. But I am intrigued by this. I love sci-fi to death. I think it's something that Housemarque should keep doing. I know I think it was Matterfall was also a sci-fi game, which was their last game. And I hope we get a sequel to this. I hope we get either a sequel or another game like this from them, because I do enjoy it. I think there's a lot to be explored here. The atmosphere was fantastic. I didn't even talk about the controller, which was for the PS5, which was ridiculous in this game, just absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, the atmosphere in this game, the level design was fantastic all the way through. So that's why I feel like you could give it an 8 very easily, but I'm going to settle on a 7. But that's going to do it for this review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you. If you like the videos we've been putting out a lot more reviews lately. There's also playthroughs that go up every week. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you're just here for the reviews, I understand, but if you do want to watch the playthroughs, that would also be appreciated, as we put a lot of time and effort into those. But I understand if you're only here for the reviews. But again, thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you next time. Bye, guys.